That evening, the house was too quiet, the kind of silence that makes you feel like something is about to happen. I was folding laundry on the couch, just lost in the rhythm of it, when Daniel rushed in. His energy hit me like a cold draft. He was jittery, hurried, as if every second was running through his fingers. I looked up at him, my hands frozen mid-fold. He wasn't just restless, he was carrying something, a story he had already decided to deliver. And deep inside, I felt the smallest twist of unease. "Rebecca," he blurted, his words spilling out fast, too fast. "I can't stay tonight. Mom had a health scare. I need to be with her at the hospital." The way he said it left me stunned, like I had been pushed into ice water. My heart lurched instantly, every muscle in me tightening with worry. His mother's health had always been delicate, and any mention of it sent me spiraling with concern. I dropped the towel I was holding, eyes locked on him, needing him to say more, to explain. "Oh my God," I whispered, my voice catching. "Is she all right? Should I come with you?" That was my instinct. To be there, to go with him, to stand by his side. That's who I am. That's what marriage meant to me. But Daniel shook his head firmly, almost too firmly. "No, no. Stay here. It's late, and I'll handle it." He leaned down and kissed my forehead, a gesture that should have comforted me, but it felt off, almost empty. I told myself to trust him, to trust us. I didn't know then how much that trust would unravel. After he spoke, I just sat there for a moment, trying to process it all. The laundry basket was still in front of me, but suddenly it felt like a useless distraction. My mind was racing. What if something really happened to her? Should I call the hospital? Should I call her? The thought of her lying in a sterile bed with no one else there made my chest ache. Still, I held back. Daniel was insistent, almost too insistent, that I stay. I remember watching him gather his keys and jacket like a man in a hurry to outrun his own shadow. His hands shook slightly, or maybe I imagined it. He kept avoiding my eyes, and that gnawed at me. Normally he would let me in, share the weight of bad news, but tonight he shut me out. I told myself it was stress, just stress. Yet, a whisper in my mind kept saying, "Something doesn't fit." I silenced it, because trust was what I owed him. When the door finally clicked shut behind him, the house felt emptier than it had in years. I stayed seated, staring at the spot where he had been standing, my thoughts spinning in circles. Should I have pushed harder to go with him? Should I have ignored his refusal? My gut was restless, but my heart clung to loyalty. I told myself I was doing the right thing by letting him handle it. Still, that night, unease lingered in the air like a draft I couldn't escape. I tried to keep myself busy after he left, but everything I did felt off. I picked up the laundry again, folding one shirt, then unfolding it, as if the fabric itself carried the tension he left behind. My eyes drifted to the clock on the wall, its ticking suddenly louder than ever. Time stretched, each minute pressing heavier on me. I wondered if he'd call, if he'd text with an update. Nothing came. Only silence, thick and uneasy. Eventually, I sat by the window, the night outside wrapping itself around the glass. The streets were quiet, a few cars passing, their headlights briefly slicing through the darkness. My phone sat on the table beside me, untouched, but glowing with the promise of news. I thought about his mom, her gentle laugh, the way she always squeezed my hand when we visited. The idea of her suffering somewhere, alone, twisted my stomach. Yet, the more I thought, the more something didn't line up. And there, in the stillness of my living room, I felt it. That tiny seed of doubt taking root. I pushed it away, told myself I was being paranoid, that love meant believing even when things felt strange. But deep down, I knew this night wasn't going to end with the comfort of reassurance. Instead, it felt like the beginning of something unraveling, and I couldn't shake the chill that settled into my bones. Hours slipped by, and the silence around me grew unbearable. I kept glancing at my phone, waiting for Daniel to call, to tell me something. Anything. But the screen stayed dark, taunting me with its stillness. Finally, the vibration shattered the quiet, making me jump. My heart leapt. I thought it was him. But when I picked it up, I saw her name. His mother. Relief and dread tangled together as I answered. "Rebecca, hi," she said, her tone calm, almost cheerful. "Do you know where Daniel is? I tried calling him, but he won't answer." Her words hit me like a slap. I froze, staring at the wall as my brain scrambled to make sense of what I was hearing. Slowly, I forced a breath out. "He said he was with you. At the hospital. Aren't you there?" My voice cracked, heavy with confusion, searching for something solid to hold on to. There was a pause on her end, a pause so heavy it seemed to press into the room with me. Then she laughed softly, but it wasn't humor. It was disbelief. "Hospital? Darling, I'm fine. I've been home all evening." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me, my chest tightening as her words settled in. In that moment, every ounce of air left the room. I could barely form words, caught between panic, anger, and the sharp sting of betrayal I didn't want to believe. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to respond, though my voice barely sounded like mine. "You've been home?" I asked, clinging to the hope that maybe I'd misheard her. But she confirmed it again, steady and clear. My stomach sank like a stone dropped in water. The world around me blurred, the lamp in the corner, the folded clothes on the couch. All of it felt distant, unreal. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles aching from the pressure. Her voice softened. "Rebecca, are you all right? You sound shaken." I swallowed hard, trying to find words that didn't exist. How could I tell her that her son had just ripped a hole in the trust I built my life on? Instead, I muttered something weak, something like, "Yes, I'm fine, just tired." A lie to cover another lie. She believed me, or at least she didn't press. We said goodbye, and the line went dead, leaving me stranded in the echo of her truth. I sat there, phone still in my hand, staring at nothing. My chest rose and fell in sharp, shallow breaths, like I couldn't quite fill my lungs. Doubt wasn't whispering anymore. It was screaming, clawing at me, demanding to be heard. The man I trusted most, the man who had just kissed my forehead with such forced calm, had woven a story so cruel it dragged his own mother into it. And in that silence after the call, I realized I couldn't ignore the cracks anymore. I set the phone down on the coffee table, but my hand lingered there, trembling. The room suddenly felt colder, as if every ounce of warmth had been sucked out. I pulled my sweater tighter around me, but it didn't help. My mind replayed the conversation, word for word, looping endlessly. "Hospital? Darling, I'm fine." Each replay was another stab, another confirmation that something was horribly wrong. I tried to steady myself, to think logically, but emotion flooded in too fast. Anger flared, then fear, then a hollow ache I couldn't quite name. My heart was at war with my mind, one part of me screaming that there had to be another explanation, another part whispering that I already knew the truth. My body felt heavy, as though gravity had doubled, pinning me to that couch. The weight of his lie pressed against my chest until breathing became a task. And yet, beneath the shock, something sharper began to form. A clarity, a resolve I didn't expect. I wasn't going to sit in this fog forever. He thought he had spun a story airtight enough to keep me quiet, but the call with his mother had lit a spark I couldn't ignore. My hands clenched in my lap, nails digging into my skin. I didn't know what I'd do next, but I knew one thing. This was no longer about trust. It was about truth. and I was going to find it. I stared at my phone for what felt like hours before finally pressing his number. My hand shook as the line rang, each tone pounding in my ears. When he picked up, his voice was strained, rushed. "Hey," he said, like nothing was wrong. I forced my tone calm, but inside, I was boiling. "How's your mom? Is she resting?" The silence that followed was thick, like he was caught mid-thought. Yes, she's stable. We're just waiting on tests," he stammered. My heart clenched, not because I believed him, but because I could hear the cracks in his lie. I sat straighter, gripping the phone so tightly I thought it might crack. My voice turned cold, steady in a way I hadn't expected. "Interesting," I said, "because I just spoke to her. She's at home. Perfectly fine." The words left my mouth like ice, deliberate and sharp. There was a pause, long, dangerous. Then his voice rose, defensive, almost angry. "Why would you call her? I told you I'd handle it." I could almost see his face through the phone, jaw tight, eyes darting, desperate to maintain control. But he had slipped, and he knew it. I lowered my voice, not with fear, but with quiet power. "You're not at the hospital, Daniel, so tell me, where are you really?" And then, just like that, the line went dead. The silence after he hung up was louder than any shouting match we'd ever had. I stared at the screen, his name still glowing faintly, and felt my stomach twist. He didn't deny it. He didn't explain. He just ran. That silence was all the confirmation I needed. My hands shook as I set the phone down, the weight of it suddenly unbearable, as though it had become the very vessel of his betrayal. I leaned back into the couch, my body heavy, my chest hollow. Memories of us together flashed through my mind. Vacations, dinners, those lazy Sunday mornings where he held me like I was his whole world. Were those moments real, or were they just another part of his performance? The thought was a knife, slicing away at everything I thought I knew. I felt a tear slide down, hot and unwanted, but I didn't bother to wipe it away. Instead, something inside me shifted. The Rebecca who folded laundry and trusted blindly was gone. Sitting there in the dim light of the living room, I realized I had crossed a line, quietly but irreversibly. I wasn't going to beg for answers he wasn't willing to give. I wasn't going to keep pretending his stories held weight. If he thought he could build a house of lies and lock me inside, he was about to learn I knew how to find the doors. I sat in the half-light of the living room, my heart pounding like a drum I couldn't silence. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, as though the walls themselves knew the truth before I did. I picked up the phone again, staring at his name on the screen, but I didn't press call this time. What was the point? He had already chosen to disappear into the shadows of his lie. And now, I was left with the pieces. The strangest part was how quickly shock gave way to clarity. I wasn't lost. I was awake. Every instinct in me screamed that his deception was bigger than just tonight. That call with his mother had been the unmasking, the slip in the curtain. He wanted me to believe in sickness and hospitals, but all I could see now was secrecy and betrayal. My chest hurt, but it wasn't from heartbreak. It was from the rage quietly burning to life. That night, I didn't cry myself to sleep. Instead, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind tracing every breadcrumb, every detail, every excuse he had ever given me. The lies he thought I'd let slide now felt like evidence, stacking higher with every memory. He thought he had ended the conversation by hanging up, but what he didn't know was that he had started something far bigger, something I couldn't and wouldn't let go. By morning, the fog of disbelief had burned off, leaving only determination. I wasn't going to sit in the dark, waiting for more half-truths. If Daniel thought I would keep swallowing his stories, he underestimated me. So, I opened the GPS tracker on his car, the one we'd installed years ago after a break-in. My finger hovered over the app for a moment, my pulse hammering. Then I tapped it, and his secrets lit up before me. The screen showed me a pattern, a trail of his movements I had never noticed. There it was, an upscale apartment complex, visited again and again. The pin on the map stared back at me, taunting, undeniable. My chest tightened as realization sank in. While I waited at home, folding laundry, worrying about his mother, he had been building another life across town. The betrayal wasn't abstract anymore. It had an address, a place where his lies lived. That evening, I drove there, my hands gripping the wheel so hard they ached. The city lights blurred past me, my thoughts sharper than ever. When I pulled up near the complex, my stomach turned at the sight of its polished glass doors and manicured entrance. I parked across the street, engine off, my body rigid with anticipation. I told myself I was only here to see, to know. But deep down, I already understood. Whatever I found here would change everything. I waited in the car, the night pressing in on me, every shadow outside stretching longer than it should. My hands trembled against the steering wheel, not from fear, but from the electric charge of knowing I was about to see the truth with my own eyes. Minutes dragged like hours, each one daring me to give up and go home. But I stayed. I had to. I wasn't leaving until I caught the ghost of his lies in the flesh. Then, the door of the building opened. My breath hitched as Daniel stepped out, but he wasn't alone. A woman followed him, tall, graceful, with her hand brushing his arm in a way that screamed intimacy. The way he leaned toward her, smiling, carefree, was the kind of ease I hadn't seen in our home for months. Watching them together felt like being gutted from the inside, yet I couldn't look away. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was proof. I sank lower in my seat, my phone clutched tightly in my palm. Through the windshield, I raised it just high enough and clicked. The shutter sound was quiet, but to me, it felt deafening. Photo after photo, I captured them. His arm at her waist, the laugh they shared, the way he glanced around before leading her to his car. My fingers shook, but my resolve didn't. Each picture was a nail in the coffin of his deception. Each one a weapon he didn't know I was collecting. I stayed there long after they drove away, my body stiff in the silence of the car. The photos burned in my phone, proof I hadn't wanted but desperately needed. I scrolled through them once, twice, my stomach twisting with every swipe. Each image was another betrayal staring back at me, undeniable and raw. Yet with the ache came something steadier. Control. For the first time, I wasn't just the wife waiting at home. I was the witness, the keeper of the truth. When I finally started the engine, the sound roared too loudly in the still night, but I didn't care. My reflection in the rearview mirror startled me. I looked harder, sharper, older somehow. There was grief there, yes, but beneath it, fire. I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I had evidence. And evidence meant power. And power meant he couldn't talk his way out of this anymore. The lies he wrapped himself in were now unraveling in my hands. Driving home, I rehearsed the words I'd never thought I'd say. Words sharp enough to cut through the years we had built together. My chest tightened, but not from fear, from anticipation. I didn't know exactly how or when I'd use what I had gathered, but I knew I would. Daniel had carved this path with his deceit, and I was no longer the woman blindly following behind him. I was the one laying down the next stone. By the weekend, I had everything in place. My heart no longer raced with fear. It beat with a steady rhythm of resolve. I invited everyone for dinner. Daniel, his mother, even a couple of close relatives. On the surface, it looked like a warm family gathering, just another Saturday night. But inside me, it was a stage, and I had rehearsed every single line. The table was set, candles flickering, dishes steaming, the air thick with unspoken truths waiting to be served. Daniel walked in with that familiar smile, the one that used to disarm me so easily. This time, it only made my blood simmer. He kissed my cheek, sat down, and started chatting as if life were perfectly normal. I smiled back, polite, controlled, letting him believe in the illusion for just a little longer. His mother laughed at some small story, passing the breadbasket across the table, completely unaware of the storm that was about to break. When the plates were full and the wine glasses half empty, I knew it was time. I reached into my bag and placed the envelope on the table, sliding it forward until it rested between the serving dishes. Conversation slowed, eyes turned to me, and Daniel's smile faltered. With calm hands, I opened it, spreading out the photos, the call logs, every piece of truth I had collected. Daniel said he was with his mother in the hospital, I said, my voice clear, steady. But as you can see, he was somewhere else entirely. The silence that followed was thick, almost suffocating. His mother's fork clattered against her plate as she leaned closer, eyes wide at the photographs. "How could you lie about me like that? About my health?" Her voice shook with hurt more than anger, and for a moment, I saw Daniel flinch, his mask cracking under the weight of her disappointment. He opened his mouth, but no words came, only stammering sounds that carried no defense. Finally he tried, his tone desperate. "Rebecca, please, we can talk about this. Just us." He reached for me, but I pulled my hand away before he could touch me. The gesture was small, but it sliced through the room louder than any argument. "No, Daniel," I said, my voice sharp but calm. "You talked enough. With her. I've had my fill of lies." His eyes darted from me to the table, to the damning evidence staring back at him. Around us, the family exchanged uneasy glances, whispers stirring like wind through dry leaves. I could feel their judgment, their pity, but none of it touched me. I wasn't here to be pitied. I was here to draw the line he thought I'd never cross. He looked at me then, truly looked, like he didn't recognize the woman sitting across from him. And maybe he didn't, because the version of me who excused his absences, who accepted his words without proof, had been buried the night he hung up that phone. I gathered the photos back into the envelope, slow and deliberate, the way you close a door that should never have been opened. Then I looked up at him, straight into the eyes that once held every promise I believed in. "I'm done," I said, my voice steady, almost calm. "There's nothing left here for me to listen to. You've spoken enough lies to last a lifetime." For the first time, he didn't argue. He just sat there, shrinking beneath the weight of his own choices. His mother shook her head, her disappointment etched deeper than any anger could carve. "I raised you better than this," she whispered, and those words cut him in a way my silence never could. He tried to speak again, but his voice broke, the confidence he wore like armor now shattered. I pushed my chair back slowly, the scrape against the floor sounding final, like a gavel. Everyone watched, but I felt oddly free, light even. As I stood, I realized the power wasn't in catching him, or even in exposing him. It was in reclaiming myself. I had been the wife who trusted, the woman who believed, the partner who gave without limits. But tonight, I became something else, the one who chose herself. And with that, I left him there, seated in front of his family, drowning in the wreckage of his lies. For once, I didn't look back. Months later, I hardly recognized the woman I used to be. The days of waiting by the window, second-guessing myself, folding laundry with a knot in my stomach. They feel like a life lived by someone else. Now, my mornings begin differently. A cup of coffee, sunlight spilling through the kitchen, and a to-do list filled with things that are mine and mine alone. I poured myself into work, into passions I had shelved for far too long, and slowly, piece by piece, I built a life that felt like mine again. There are moments when the old ache resurfaces, like a phantom pain, A song on the radio, a familiar scent, even a street we once walked together can stir something in me. But it doesn't undo me anymore. If anything, it reminds me of how far I've come. From a woman blinded by loyalty to one who sees her own worth clearly. I carry scars, yes, but I wear them like proof of survival. They don't define me. They define what I overcame. One afternoon, I spotted him in a cafe. He looked smaller somehow, like life had been chipping away at him piece by piece. His eyes found mine, and for a moment, it was as if the air stilled. He approached quietly, almost timidly. "Rebecca, I made a mistake. I regret everything." His voice cracked, but there was no power in it anymore. I smiled, steady and sure. "So do I. I regret believing you for as long as I did. But I don't regret leaving you. That was the best decision of my life." And then I walked away, light as air, free at last.